William Shakespeare's life and literature. Many times when we think of Shakespeare, we think of him as a great poet and playmaker, but what led up to his success? Throughout his life, he was able to create 38 plays and 154 sonnets. His views of the English language helped redefine the thoughts of human nature into their true form. Shakespeare, one of the most famous and known authors in history, was believed to be born on April 23, 1564, in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. Though his actual birthday was never certified, we know that he was baptized on April 26, 1564. It was said that he began his education at the age of 6 or 7 at Stratford Grammar School. This school was built 200 years before Shakespeare was born and primarily focused on the beliefs of the reigning monarch. In 1553, due to King Edward VI, the school was renamed to King's New School, Stratford. During the years that Shakespeare attended the school, at least one and possibly 3 headmasters stepped down because of their devotion to the Catholic religion proscribed by Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth had a major influence on the school because their primary focus was learning Latin. His early years that Shakespeare had studied, he had learned from many Latin authors such as Seneca, Cicero, Ovid, Virgil, and Horace, and they would have been the main focus of his literary training. Later, he was removed from the school because of their financial issues. This portion of his life leading up to the creation of the plays and poetry is very significant because it questions us to believe how his literature and writing had been if he had continued school. After leaving school in 1578, William Shakespeare's life was called the Lost Years. During this time, Shakespeare left Stratford to London for financial reasons. This is where Shakespeare had learned a great deal of business, including the creation of the Globe Theatre, home to many of the plays that he wrote after this period of his life. During the last 4 years of the Lost Years, it was believed that Shakespeare had been creating and developing many of the plots of the upcoming plays that he wrote. He was part of different acting companies and often found himself writing the plays for the companies, and became a shareholder of Lord Chamberlain's men. During the period of 1595, Shakespeare wrote one of the most commonly known plays, including Richard II, Romeo and Juliet, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and The Merchant of Venice. The earlier plays that he wrote in the 1590s were in favor of history, the way he used the plays to captivate and express his views upon weak leaders, including the origins of the Tudor dynasty. During the 1600s, Shakespeare began to write many of his tragic and comedic plays, including Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Macbeth. William Shakespeare begins to have a conventional style that uses mainly metaphors and rhetorical phrases to make his plays in a more dramatic way. When we look at Hamlet, it has a primary focus on betrayal, retribution, and moral failure. Shakespeare uses a very similar style in these types of plays where the plot twist is destroying the hero and those he loves. We see that very simple style in Romeo and Juliet, where Romeo had died, causing the death of his love Juliet. The plays performed had a unique style of plot, in many cases to have a degree of variation of the phrases and metaphors that he created for the purpose of these types of plays. The plays performed had a unique style of plot, in many cases to have a degree of variation of the phrases and metaphors that were being used. It was believed that Shakespeare contributed 3,000 words to the English language. His impact to modern English was very significant because it not only helped show the impact of the plays, but also gave us a sense of meaning to human emotions. The use of simple phrases was very common at the time, with lines in a free-flowing style. Due to his creativity, many people came to see his plays. At the time, plays weren't very common because mainly the rich could only be able to see them. But after the addition of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, people from different areas of the community came out to enjoy his plays. The royal family, including King James, had issued a royal license to Shakespeare, and the name of the theatrical group changed to the King's Men. After the King's rule, When Queen Elizabeth came into power, she had also enjoyed his plays. Shakespeare was said to be attracted to Queen Elizabeth and the court and proved to be a faithful servant to them. Evidence of this includes A Midsummer Night's Dream. In the play, Shakespeare was the king serving to her royal majesty. Overall, the queen had very much enjoyed the play that their actors performed before her again at the royal palace at Greenwich. After the plague started to be contracted in the theater, William Shakespeare moved on and started to write sonnets. His interest was not only due to the plague, but also from a financial standpoint. It also gave the community interest in reading his sonnets. In total, Shakespeare produced 154 sonnets over the period of 1592 to 1598. The sonnets from 1 through 126 describe the romantic relationship of a young man's life. From the first 17 of them, the main message is to portray the father's image of immortality to their children. The rest of the sonnets give us the remaining of the young man's life, mainly focusing on the power of poetry and pure love to defeat death and all oblivious amenity. The many topics that are expressed are poetry, painting, music, and nobility. The last of Shakespeare's sonnets have an explicit view towards the mysterious woman. The transition from the man to the woman displays the poet's passion to express the intensity of their friendship. The feelings of the woman display the tone of distressing, uncontrollable urges, and the feelings of inadequacy. However, no one knows whether or not these sonnets reflected Shakespeare's own life because he wasn't with his family for the majority of the time that he was writing these plays and sonnets. He did occasionally visit his home during the summer, but historians believe in many ways his life is reflected on these sonnets, and the way he expresses his opinions and emotions relate to everyday life. No one knows the exact date that William Shakespeare had died, but many historians believe that he died on his birthday. Till this day, William Shakespeare had been known for his own style of literature, and is most commonly quoted with the exception to the Bible. Shakespeare used human emotion in a very beautiful way, whether it was in his plays or poems, and will be viewed as one of the most famous, influential, and inspiring authors we have seen from history.